अगल बगल बैठ के आए शताब्दी में, तो आपका ख्याल हम एक दूसरे को निहार रहे थे चुपचाप? हम लोगों ने ये तय किया, हालांकि वो निहारने योग्य अवश्य है, मैं तो नहीं, हम लोगों ने तय किया कि हमको कुछ मिस्चीफ पर बात करनी चाहिए। यानी कलाओं इत्यादि के बारे में एक बड़ा भ्रम यह है कि बहुत ही पवित्र और गंभीर और आशयों से पूरित होती हैं और इनके पीछे बहुत ही बड़ा उद्देश्य इत्यादि होता है। बहुत सारी चीज़ें शुद्ध दुष्टता से पैदा होती हैं। जैसे आपको तो खैर पता ही होगा, चंडीगढ़ में तो 3-3 सरकारें हैं, कि सरकारें भी बहुत हद तक मूर्खता से चलती हैं। मतलब थोड़ा बहुत उनमें अकल भी होती होगी, लेकिन ज़्यादा नहीं होती। तो इसी तरह से हमने सोचा कि भाई, what is the place of mischief in the making of art, and whether mischief plays any role? Do you think so?
Well, my guru is Bhupen Thakur. So I think his work was personified mischief.
Yes, of course.
So he really turned everything around. I mean, he turned around the notion of high art, because I think he introduced this whole notion of popular art, which has really influenced, I think, is much more influential than people have thought it is, because I think it's really influenced film. I mean, if, for example, have you seen this kind of underground film, Kamal Swaroop's Om Brother?
Yes, yes.
I think it's totally Baroda school.
Yeah.
You know, I think Bhupen has really sort of influenced this whole, looking at the way we look has really changed after he started using the popular in the 70s. And one thing is that he sort of brought in, like, you know, the aesthetics of calendar art or popular art, but he classicized it in a sense. He brought in all kinds of subject matter. For example, the banal middle class small town life, for instance, you know. I mean, I remember reading his translation of his Gujarati story called Foreign Soap. So in those days, we all used to yearn after Cane soap. So this whole thing is about this man who wears this blue nylon shirt, you know, and who buys this foreign soap, and his whole family uses it, so he gets murderous with rage. So it's kind of very ironic, satirical, but also very affectionate, and this whole turning around of middle class society in a way, you know. So I'm very interested in that in a sense, and I think I use it in my work. A lot of humor.
You know, somebody asked me the other day कि आप इतना हंसते क्यों रहते हैं? तो मैंने कहा भाई आपके सामने रोएं, सब you will feel very odd if I start. But then I went back to an episode. There was an English art critic and poet called John Wayne. He rose to become the Oxford Poetry Chair. And very interesting, when he, you know, as Oxford Poetry Chair, you have to deliver a series of public lectures. And he delivered those public lectures and then published them as a book called Professing Poetry, which was literally his job. He was a professor of poetry. But he had a book called Weep Before God. When I was a student of MA, there was a celebration of Tolstoy's 50th death anniversary, to which he had come, along with Stephen Spender. And this book was there. And as I opened it, I found a very interesting Jewish proverb. Weep before God, laugh before men. So I said to myself, I don't have the gift of belief, which quite simply means I don't have a God to weep before. So I'll weep a little in my poetry, which I do. But as for men, I should laugh. And the second reason is that I commit so many stupidities by the day that I keep on laughing on myself. And because I keep on laughing myself, I think I earn a right to laugh a little on you. That's it. There's no other. So this is also a way of mischief. You know, you're playing mischief with yourself and you're doing mischief with others. And to remind them that you see, one of the things that worries me is that from public life, humor and wit are disappearing. You know, everybody takes offense at everything. हमारे यहाँ देवी देवता जो हैं वो एक दूसरे का अपहरण करते रहते हैं. सरस्वती के पीछे ब्रह्मा भागते हैं, उनकी बेटी है इत्यादि. इंद्र की जो यौन इच्छाएं हैं उनका प्रबल प्रमाण है। ये सब देवता है। और अगर आप किसी देवता के बारे में कुछ कह दीजिए तो कल आपको कोई किसी की भावनाओं को चोट पहुंच जाएगी। ये ससरी भावनाओं को चोट बहुत पहुंचने लगी है। अभी तक इन भावनाओं का पता ही नहीं था कि कहाँ थी, और अब यकायक चोट इनको पहुंचती रहती है। तो आई थिंक ए सेंस ऑफ ह्यूमर इज very, very necessary. And I think a lot of modern art, has this sense of humor, making fun of oneself and making fun of others and making fun of reality as a whole. Whereas in the kind of politics that we have entered, there is no sense of humor. Nobody, for instance, the Prime Minister just does not smile.
Well, I remember the good old days when there used to be giddy jokes,
Yeah.
So there were all these jokes going around the country,
And mind you, the leader of opposition or whatever he is, Mr. Advani, he keeps on wringing his hands all the time. But which is perhaps an expression of his ambition. But he doesn't smile either. Now you have these top people who don't know how to smile. Now how can you have a democracy in which people do not have a sense of humor? How can you attack each other unless you have a sense of humor? You can't even, and if you attack, किसी की भावनाओं को चोट पहुंच जाएगी, और पथरिया ने कहा मेरे खिलाफ कोई पुलिस केस दर्ज हो जाएगा, और फिर हम जवाब देते घूमेंगे कि साहब I didn't mean this and ये वो फलाना। मतलब आप अगर ब्रिटिश पार्लियामेंट की प्रोसीडिंग्स देखें और ब्रिटिश प्रेस देखें, वो एक दूसरे को कुत्ते बिल्ली क्या क्या नहीं कहते, और वो हैं भी, जैसे कि हम भी हैं। लेकिन हम एक दूसरे को कहने से किसी की भावनाओं को चोट पहुंच जाएगी। One of the I think primary functions of art is to remind you that truth is not so simple. It is multi-layered, it is nuanced, it is not simple as like a samosa you can eat. हमारी एक जो हालत इस समय हो रही है दुर्भाग्य से, it seems to be that this afternoon we are talking with all our universities, this, that and the other. We have a huge number of universities which have come up, and knowledge production is going down. Imagine the irony that we have such a lot of higher education and we have so little knowledge production. You go by the profiles of these universities. I don't much care whether you're considered to be in the top 200 universities of the world or not. But even IITs, which is supposed to be, great centers of innovation and this, that and the other, they are all declining. And we are watching helplessly. And nobody seems to be bothered. Look at the media. The press more or less shuts out the arts. There is nothing for the arts left. Some of the art criticism, whether of theatre or music or visual arts, started from newspapers. Some of our best critics, whom we revere and remember with much nostalgia, Richard Bartholomew, Nissim Ezekiel, Gyaneshwar Nath Karni, Raghav Menon, etc., they all wrote in newspapers. I have seen my father-in-law, Nemichand Jain, after the performance of the play, going to the statesman office, sit there and write the review, because the review must appear tomorrow. And there was this. And therefore, that kind of a cultural literacy has also declined. And pardon my saying so, most of us are culturally illiterate, although we may be PhDs and whatever. And there is no way we are trying to sort of bridge this dichotomy which is creating this irony actually, that we have so little. I have 14 or 15 PhDs done on me. And although I was a district magistrate and I gave arms license to many people, I never took much for myself. Because मैं निर्भय आदमी, मुझे क्या किसका डर. लेकिन जब से मैंने ये PhD थीसिस देखी है, तब से मैं इन 15 में से कम 12 की दिन दहाड़े हत्या करने को तैयार. They are so bad. They are terrible. I mean, you write and you get a PhD, and these are not, some obscure university in Rohtak or somewhere. These are universities of Shantiniketan and Aligarh in Delhi and things of that kind. I imagine, is this I don't know about other languages, but it must be happening in other languages as well. There are hardly any teachers in Hindi who can teach medieval literature, because they just cannot teach it. I mean, whole wealth of literature will become inaccessible because the academics are not up to it. Now, it's a world which we must try to address and understand. Why is this happening? I mean, academics are better paid now, well paid in fact, and they should be. But what do they do in return? Most of them, anyway. I was working in a public institution of art where there were 150 employees. I came to learn this to my horror. 150? I knew of about 20. And I thought, though 20 can handle it, but maybe another 30 were required to support. So 50, but there are 150 in Lalit Kala Academy which does nothing. So we have these huge bureaucracies which have come up in a big way, and these bureaucracies have now become, मैंने लोकतंत्र में जो तंत्र है वही लोक को खाए जा रहा है. It's sort of devouring it by the day. And I was reading today in Times of India, they have published a list of officers. Some acts have been repealed, but the officer who is the commissioner for giving permission under that repealed act remains. So you see, we are landing up in a strange sort of situation. Middle class, particularly, seem to be ceding from their mother tongues all over the country. अंग्रेजी माध्यम के स्कूलों से पढ़ाई होनी चाहिए. अंग्रेजी के हम तो BA तक हिंदी माध्यम से पढ़े हैं और फटीचर स्कूलों में पढ़े हैं, मतलब जहाँ फटी पे बैठते थे. और हमको तो नहीं, बल्कि हमारे जो साथ के छात्र थे वो जाके मास्टर साहब के घर में कपड़े भी खींचते थे. There was a time like that. No, tell me, Shmala, what do you think of the reception to your kind of intriguing work? Have you faced a problem in terms of receptivity? Because this is not the usual work, I mean, this is not the easel painting. This is not kind of conventional photography. This is not conventional routine cinema, and you're combining all these elements. Do you think that your reception has been...
There are two kinds of reception, On the one hand, people in the art world didn't take my work seriously for a long time. It's only very recently, after I got a large body of work, that they're seeing that, there's something serious here and that's being developed and so on. But people love my work, actually. I mean, I have fantastic audience response during the shows. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing. Like, for example, when I had some really funny incidents, like when I had my first show, Phantom Lady, in 1998 in Gallery Chemold. I'd made it like an installation. So I'd put up the photographs with the notes that I'd made and the costumes and props and all that. So there's an elderly lady, in a kind of frock who was going around, and she was there for 2 or 3 hours in the opening, and nobody knew who she was, and she was looking very intently at everything, So finally she comes up to me and she says, I had made this kind of strapless gown for the vamp. I was playing also the vamp, the Phantom Lady and the vamp, and there's the strapless gown which was being displayed. So she says, I want to buy that gown. I said, I'm sorry, it's not for sale and all that. You know, she had fantasized herself wearing that gown, which was so funny. Then she said, I want to buy those, those shoes. I got some cheap pair of gold shoes, which I was wearing for the role. She said, I want those shoes, I said, you can get it down the road in the department store, So there's this amazing sort of, people get into the fantasy and identify themselves completely. And that's very interesting because there's this, I'm also dealing with this, while using photography as fiction, I'm also dealing with the documentary aspect because it all happens, but it's fictional. So it's real and unreal at the same time, and I find that the response is like that as well, because on the one hand they know it's fiction, but they think it's real, they get confused. And for example, Lalita Lajmi,
yes.
Again for this Phantom Lady, she said, where do you find this film? She thought that she's Guru Dutt's sister, by the way, Lalita Lajmi, so she knows about film. She thought had actually recreated or some old film of Nadia's, I said, no, it's completely fictional. I've just done some funny thing, I've just taken off and I've just used some references to Fearless Nadia or that kind of character. And it's completely concocted story. And I had another show where I show these photo romances. And I would think the work has female characters and it's very feminist work, so maybe men don't respond to it so much. But several of the men over there came and said the work is so moving. And one boy particularly, he was a student from Chitrakala Parishad in Bangalore. I had done this photo romance called, it's a tragic love story. Painted photographs, a set of painted photographs called Darde-Dil. So I don't know Hindi at all, but I love using these Hindi titles, and they're all titles from old films. So it's called The Anguished Heart. So it was about this woman and and her sister staying with the elderly mother. They're impoverished and staying in this kind of Chandni Chowk, sort of ruined haveli, and then she has this love affair with this man, and then there's some problem as usual. They can't get together and so on. So this boy kept telling me, what is that sister doing there? 2-3 times he came and asked me very aggressively, what is that sister doing there, So I said, no, she's like a Sakhi figure and blah, blah. She, has to be there to carry messages to the lover and so on. Then he came up to me and said, why I'm telling you, because my father has married 2 sisters. So it's amazing, he suddenly saw this erotic thing. I'd never seen it that way. Then I started looking at it and reading the whole story differently, So it's very interesting that they sort of identify it.
No, in some of your works there seems to be, let's say, a narrative line, like the 3 women from Ramayana. So you have a given narrative and you sort of, but in some others you are fabricating a narrative, like in this perhaps. Now, fabricating a narrative through art, is it different than fabricating fiction in prose or whatever? I mean, how do you go about it? There's no randomness to it.
No, I do it very visually actually. I describe scenes, I make a list of scenes.
You make a list, you write down.
I write down, I don't actually sketch. I've never done models or sketches in my work. So I write down notes. So I say this scene, like in this location, this will happen kind of thing, But it's very rough. It's very improvisatory because I sort of make up the things on this.
No, for instance, this one about in which Atul Dodia and others figure. I mean, you made those kinds of notes and then decided to.
No, I saw the location. I had an idea for a long time. I said, what will this be about? I want to make a sequel. So the first one was about the twin sisters, lost twin sisters separated at birth. And the search for the Phantom Lady for a lost twin sister, which is of course this whole thing of the mirror image, the doppelganger and this whole psychological thing. The second one, I bumped off that twin sister, in the first thing. So I said, what could the second story be? So I said, I rescue this young girl. So actually I've been very interested in working with this kind of 10 or 11-year-old girl, I like that age, and there's something interesting that, about that age. It's a kind of very innocent, gawky kind of age. So I wanted this kind of schoolgirl, So it started with that I would rescue her. So then what would I do? And then when they commissioned me for Cinema City, then this would go on. So what would be the villainy now, Because earlier it was smuggling. Because pre-liberalization, the villains, the mafia was about smuggling.
Ah.
And now the mafia is about land. So in the countryside it's about mining or whatever, and in the cities it's about real estate. So then it became about the real estate mafia. And funnily enough, as I said, each location was controversial or contested. It was a contested site over the land.
Yeah, this you
Yeah, and
explained when you were
development.
listing out those sites.
Yeah.
You said that each
So
one-
I had these these are kind of like, under kind of plots. And the actual scenes I make up from the location. When I go and I do location hunting, and once I just see the locations, then I take some pictures, like, like sketches, but in my small camera I take some pictures, and then I make I think of scenes. So, but we shoot a lot. I shoot hundreds of pictures and then select very few from that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's
So-
like a film, like you just shoot a lot.
But you
and
never
then
thought of
edit.
making a film. Let's put it this way.
I made a 35-minute film,
Oh, you did?
Paris Autumn, out of still photographs.
Uh-huh.
No, I'm not interested in making a film at all.
Film.
So several people have, no.
No.
Because filmmaking is an industry.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in making experimental short films, which is very different. Yeah.
You know, I remember Mani Kaul, whom I did not know, rang me up once, way back in 70s, and he said that I want to make a film on Mukti Bodh, and I'm told that you could be interested. So I said, well, making a film, that had never occurred to me. So I said, I invited him. He came, and I used to think that I am a great authority on Mukti Bodh. And that in one meeting, that authority of mine was totally demolished. Because he had read Mukti Bodh so closely and so deeply that I was very touched. And I said, yes, we'll make it. I didn't understand the medium. I don't know what to do. And then I saw him partly making the film. You know, we had huge difficulty with finding funds and all. With great difficulty, we found 3.5 lakhs. And we made the Krishi Mandis and such like to provide some, because I was looking after agriculture, so I made use of that, misuse of it in fact, etc. And then the film was made. Now we have this notion that the film has to be about something. You know, the aboutness. And a painting has to be about something. A poem has to be about something. So I remember once a friend who is the President of India, Gyani Zail Singh, as President of India, came to Bharat Bhavan. And he came to the museum. And right in front was a painting by Amba Das. And then he turned around to Swaminathan and said, अरे भाई खेत की हो खलिहान की हो ये पेंटिंग किस बारे में कुछ समझ तो आनी चाहिए. Swami was outraged. उनका ज्ञानी जी राष्ट्रपति जी ये पेंटिंग किसी के बारे में नहीं है ये खुद है. Gyani Zail Singh said he has a sense of humor, incidentally. One of the last politicians to have a sense of humor. He has a good sense of humor. So he said, अरे भाई बात आपने बड़ी दूरंदेशी की कही लेकिन समझ तो आनी चाहिए. So that became a notion. We went a little ahead and we had a governor who was from Haryana and he was hell of a prude. And he could not utter his opinion because the Prime Minister, the Vice President, they will all be there and they used to praise the show and the collection, so he will keep quiet. But he thought in Gyani Zail Singh's reaction, he was encouraged to say something. But anyway, there was a painting of Swami. He said, ये समझ में आती है तो आइए ज्ञानी जी देखिए. तो मैंने कहा ये सब स्वामीनाथन की है. तो देखा ज्ञानी, हाँ ये समझ आती है. तो स्वामी ने कहा कि राष्ट्रपति जी बनाई तो मैंने है लेकिन मेरी समझ में तो नहीं आती है. Now to go back to Manikol's film, when the film was made, there was an outburst of our Marxist friends who thought this was not about Mukti Bodh. I try to argue that no art can be about any other art. And art is an autonomous activity. It can relate to, it may speak to, it may connect to, but it cannot be about any other art. So this film is not about Mukti Bodh in that sense. And even people like Nirmal Verma had a huge fight. I had a violent evening with Nirmal Verma on this. He said, समझ ये वही कि इसमें कोई सिर पैर नहीं है. उनका सिर पैर हर जगह क्यों होना चाहिए? और जिनके पास सिर है वो कितना इस्तेमाल करते हैं? You see, the whole notion that a work of art, it may have elements which will cohere into themselves, but to make them obvious to the viewing public is limiting its meaning. After all, people are free to create their own meanings.
Yeah, actually, we discussed some things on the train.
Yeah.
We had a 4-hour kind of long conversation, talking very loudly about lots of things. So the whole carriage was listening to. So one of the things you said was that people in the Hindi heartland don't read very much.
That's true.
So, how do you feel as because we are talking about other regions, like for example, I come from Karnataka and there's strong Kannada literature, or Kerala and other places. How do you, who do you address and?
No, I address no one.
And
quite frankly.
what is the kind of?
No,
you asked me about my audience, so I'm asking you about your audience.
No, the point is, if you look at the Hindi belt, the population would be nearly half the population of India, almost, in terms of sheer numbers. It has 8 or 9 states. If you look at some of the best writers, forget about me, our best outstanding writers, they do not sell more than 2,000, 3,000 copies. Whereas Hindi belt literacy has gone up to more than 60% now, after having been low on literacy for quite a while. But it has not increased proportionately in terms of the reading public. And in fact, anybody who writes well in Hindi, and there are a lot many of them, are doing a very radical act. Because writing itself is a radical act here. Because you don't have that kind of a, I was in Banaras, and as I was passing through a road, my host pointed out that this is a road on which the last journey of Premchand took place. And by his own son's account, there were 13 persons in the last journey when Premchand was being taken to be cremated. 13 persons. This was in 40s, of course. So I asked this person, who was a professor in Banaras Hindu University, कि चलिए अगर आज प्रेमचंद होते और उनकी शव यात्रा निकल रही होती, 13 की जगह 33 हो गए होते. But when Sunil Gangopadhyay, who, pardon my saying so, was not a major writer, he was a good writer, when he died, in his last journey, there were thousands of Bengalis who walked. Now this cannot happen in the Hindi belt. I went to meet M.T. Vasudevan Nair, who again, according to me, is not a major writer, although he got the Gyanpith, etc. I went to meet him and I had to deliver a memorial lecture. हम यही करते रहते हैं आजकल, memorial lecture को फलाना, ये इस टाइप की चीजें, धवल के शीलों को और क्या रह गया. Anyway, so I went to see him and what town hall में हमारा lecture था. So he said कि यहीं पास ही है, हम चलते हैं. हमने कहा ठीक है. हमने वो कार वाले को कहा तुम वहां आ जाना. अरे साहब 500 से 700 लोग आके उनसे मिले. And then he explained, मैंने उनसे कहा कि आप इतने सारे लोकप्रिय हैं, आप इतने लोग आपसे कह रहे, इसलिए मैं घर में बैठ के लिख ही नहीं सकता. इतने लोग आते हैं तो मैंने होटल में एक कमरा ले रखा है. And I go there and write and nobody knows. And today evening we are going to go there Because otherwise, if we sit here, we'll neither be able to talk nor able to drink, because people keep on coming. So, there is this, and I was telling you the Assam story, which I must have told in Chandigarh also, perhaps, I don't remember. I went to inaugurate the annual conference of the Assam Sahitya Sabha. And it was a small place called Hajo, which is 35 kilometers away from Guwahati. When I landed there, I saw the largest pandal in my life. It was huge. I asked Navakant Barua कि इतना बड़ा पंडाल, बोले 1.5 लाख लोगों के लिए बनाया था, 2.5 लाख आ गए, 1 लाख बाहर है. I was barely trying to recover from the shock of it. 3.5 lakh people are in a small town just because it is the annual convention of their language. Assamese. There was a corridor like this, in which young mothers with young kids would come and keep on pointing out to these writers. We are all sitting on the dais. So I asked him, what is this? He said, in Assam it is believed that the sanskar of a child is not complete unless he or she has attended at least one annual convention of Assam Sahitya Sabha. So there is a lot of India which we do not know. And the Hindi belt in that is very unfortunate. Because if I were the best of our writers, if we do something in the main centers of Hindi, Allahabad or Lucknow or Banaras, you will not have an audience more than 500. Whereas Marathi Sahitya Sammelan, again I inaugurated it, and there were 35,000 people. So, you see, the difficulty with Hindi is that it's a language of 46 dialects. And actually everybody's mother tongue is more or less a dialect rather than Hindi itself. So there is already a bit of a, but that's a long story, and there are cultural reasons and social reasons or whatever. But we do write mostly in social loneliness. That's true.
I'll ask one question from Pushpa Maharaj. Cindy Sherman, she has also used herself in her pictures. You must have seen those.
Who?
Cindy Sherman.
Yes.
She's taken scenes from Hollywood cinema and enacted those old scenes. And you, of course, are there. What kind of similarities or dissimilarities or commonalities or different? How do you place in this context?
See, I relate to this whole kind of tradition or like history of feminist performance, either live performance or performance in video or whatever it is from the 60s and 70s. In general, I'm sort of interested. But by the time I started, I started off as a sculptor, and like through chance, it just happened. I was invited to do a work. I did it as a joke, and then I got interested. Then I started developing it, and so on. It was already a kind of well-established genre all over the world. So whichever group show that you saw and all that, there would be somebody recreating some character or something like that. So it was already there as a genre, which I decided to use. And I sort of people have asked me, are you influenced by Cindy Sherman? But at that point in the 90s, we didn't know very much about American art, we knew more about British art. The connection was more with British art. My very direct preference was actually Bhupen Kakkar, because not his actual work, but one of his catalogs, which I'd seen as a student, where he's, he's sort of being a bodybuilder, Mr. Universe, and an ad for toothpaste and so on, which I found very funny and interesting at that point, and I felt it was a wasted moment because nobody had taken up that part and developed it, So that was very directly in my mind when I started Phantom Lady. And another person I liked in performance was Gilbert and George, who was quite familiar with that at that time. Because I remember I went in '92 to America, New York for the first time. I was a sculptor then. And my friend told me the day before I was leaving that, there's this interesting artist called Cindy Sherman. She's having a show opening today. Go and see it and all that. And I never bothered to go and see it. because I was not interested. So it was much, I mean, I was not that familiar with the work. But I think the difference is that, I don't know whether to, I think with Cindy Sherman's work, unlike the other like sort of feminists, I mean my work is actually more like Eleanor Anton's work, if at all, like, you know, which I saw after when I was exhibiting Phantom Lady in Los Angeles. I saw this big retrospective of Eleanor Anton's work, who is very interested in similar things like early silent cinema and things like that, you know, and slapstick and all that, which I'm interested in as well. But Cindy Sherman's work is more, I think, psychological and surrealistic sometimes, you know. My work, I feel, is more social. It's more social and political, you know. I'm not sort of interested, and one thing I'm definitely not interested in is destroying the body. So I don't like it at all. Like, you know, I'm sort of interested in the wholeness of the body.